Remedy Entertainment's Control came out a few months ago, and just about everybody had a good time with it. The game is a critical darling, with Game of the Year recognition from major sites like IGN, Game Informer, and EGM. 8 Game Award nominations, including a win for Best Art Direction, and dozens more nominations from around the world. But you don't have to listen to the media outlets. Either Metacritic has good user review moderation, or the game is popular enough among the common folk to have survived the ESRB. I'm of course referring to Epic Store review bombing. Even before release, Control was enjoying AAA level coverage in previews and features.
How linear is this game?
Not linear at all.
What % of the puzzles will I be able to solve right when I see them versus I have to come back later?
70, 80.
I'm not averse to spoilers, but I've played Alan Wake a dozen times, so I figured I already knew what I'd be getting into, and I skipped the marketing. I tell you this so you understand my confusion on launch day when I emerged from my 8-hour marathon session and found Twitter buzzing about Control, the hot new Metroidvania. Which I found strange, because I had just been playing Control and it wasn't a Metroidvania at all. So which is it? I'm not conceited enough to immediately assume I'm the one person on the internet who's right about something. I am, however, conceited enough to make a YouTube video about everybody else being wrong. I'll be avoiding story spoilers for Control, but I will be talking about the major ability you get near the end of the game that I think is in all the trailers. I promise I won't ruin your potential experience, but if you really need that pure, uncut first playthrough, I'll be here after you play the game yourself. Before we get started, if you clicked on this video without knowing what a Metroidvania is, I applaud your bravery and my click-through metric thank you. A Metroidvania is a video game with a focus on player-driven exploration of an open game world. The general idea is that by exploring the map, players discover new abilities which they use to find new areas of the map to explore. In this example, I'm playing Hollow Knight and this guy won't let me pass the door he's guarding. Elsewhere in the world, I find a witch who gives me the power to shoot fireballs. That's useful against all kinds of enemies, but most importantly, I can defeat the guard and explore behind him where even more abilities await. Is it unfair of me to provide my own definition of a term and an essay measuring a work against that term?
Should I lie?
Yes, I'm cheating.
I should have lied.
Anyway, now that we know what a Metroidvania is, let's dive in and put it to the test. Is Control a Metroidvania? What you're seeing here is a map from Control contrasted with a map from Super Metroid. At first glance, they look pretty similar. Both maps are made up of smaller distinct rooms that add up into an interesting video game level to explore, but I want to call attention to the edges here. These are exits to other areas of the game world, which have their own maps. Control's world is made up of multiple levels as well, with a key difference. The only point of overlap is an elevator that travels between the floors. As a result, there's no interconnectedness between these individual levels. If we're feeling mean, we could write this structure off as limited and stifling, but I'm in a good mood, so let's be generous and say, hey, that just means we have 4 open worlds to explore. Or we would say that if these levels were actually open to exploration. And here it is, the big, not a Metroidvania smoking gun. Well, smoking gun number 1, we'll be back here soon. The evil has a name, and that name is access cards. Throughout Control, the player finds security clearance cards that grant them access to new areas of the world. Which sounds a lot like how I described Metroidvanias earlier, except that I lied. The player finds one card, but the next 5 aren't found, they're granted to the player by specific story missions. This is a key design difference between Control and the average Metroidvania. In Control, the player's interaction with the world is filtered through distinct story missions. They're told what to do, they're told where to do it, and they're given the access card that makes it possible. I've used the word explore a lot in this video, and that's not an accident. Not to over-romanticize, but at the core of the Metroidvania is the player's drive to master the unknown. Anything could be out there, and I'm gonna be the one to find it, damn it. Control sends you to cool places, but you know where you're going and you can follow the in-universe signposting to get there. What I want you to take away from this is that the fun of exploring is not the same thing as the fun of seeing something new. Sorry, we were talking about access cards. I highlight these as a problem for a few reasons. Like I said, they're doled out by narrative progression, firmly setting the player's path in the world on rails. There's a very artificial feel to the process. You beat level 3, so here's the key to level 4. Maybe artificial is a strange word here. Even if an item is hidden in a big Metroidvania map, it was still put there by the developer for the players to find. All I can say is that I know magic isn't real, but I still have fun watching the tricks. Which reminds me, access cards just aren't fun. A double jump or an air dash is something I can use, something I can play with. Beyond getting the player into new parts of the map, they might help with fighting enemies or just getting around the old parts of the map faster. Not so with access cards. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that no Metroidvania has ever used keys before.
Keys?
Early in Hollow Knight, you need the King's Crest to proceed. Symphony of the Night has that stupid jewel that opens 2 doors.
Thank you!
2018's Time Spinner also features a bevy of access cards, but that's a game where you also get all kinds of upgrades. You're double jumping, dashing, traveling back and forth in time, and so on. Conversely, Control's 6 access cards are offset by a mere 2 abilities. If you've played the game, you know that I'm wrong about this. Except actually, I'm not wrong, you're wrong. I'm the only one who's ever been not wrong. Don't get me wrong. I know there's actually 5 abilities unlocked in the game, but not a Metroidvania Smoking Gun number 2 is the way Control uses these abilities, or more often, the way it doesn't. Let's clear up the discrepancy. There are, in fact, 5 ability upgrades in Control. Launch lets the player throw heavy objects around. Evade is a short-range dash. Shield is a barrier to block enemy attacks. Seize possesses enemies to fight as your allies. And Levitate lets the player float around while doing whatever else they want. There's actually a 6th upgrade, which doesn't have a cool name or symbol. It's a passive effect that allows you into rooms taken over by evil mold. It's basically the Varia suit. That ability is optional since you never have to pass through a high mold area to beat the game, but more surprising is that most of the other abilities are optional too. Shield, Evade, and Seize are all useful in combat, but completely skippable. In a way, they're almost like reverse access cards, fun to use in a fight, but with no effect on the game world at large. If you want to nitpick, Evade does help you cross gaps, but that's not anything that Levitate can't do, it's just faster. The 2 mandatory abilities are the big boys, Launch and Levitate. I love both of these. Launch is your go-to offensive power, but it's also used to move these power blocks around to turn on doors. You can also stack up objects to reach stuff early. Levitate gives you the high ground on enemies while also opening up new paths and shortcuts through previously visited areas. So there we go. Abilities you find in the world that you can use during the game and that open up new paths. Control's big problem is this. The interesting abilities that are already in the game have no effect on the world, and the access cards that open the world to the player are completely inert. Here's my proposal. Combine Control's abilities and access cards into a new kind of power-up, which I call abilities. The thing about these particular abilities is that it doesn't take much reworking to turn them into proper Metroidvania tools. For your convenience, I've put together a few visual aids that demonstrate potential other uses for these optional abilities. Said before that Evade can be used to cross gaps, which is perfect. Just put a few in the player's way. Alternatively, pick an access card and swap all the corresponding doors with a glowing red wall that can be dashed through. This is off topic, but I'm surprised Evade never upgrades into a sustained dash ability, a staple of the Metroidvania genre. Shield is a pretty straightforward option. Any kind of obstacle that deals continuous damage to one specific area works for this. Seize is a bit of a strange one, but I figured they just need an enemy on the other side of a gate. Hit them with the mind control so they'll open doors for you. Please understand that I don't believe it would be easy to implement changes like this in the game as it exists today. What I'm trying to get across is that while there are bits and pieces of Metroidvania design here, it's possible to very specifically point at the gaps where more conventional action design supports the game, which I think means that we can finally answer our question. So, knowing what we do about the level design of the world and the game's limited character progression, is Control a Metroidvania? Well, hold it! Sorry to get all Phoenix right on you, but I think it might be too early to pass a verdict. It's occurred to me that there's another question that needs to be asked here. Can Control be both a Metroidvania and not a Metroidvania? Maybe you've heard the saying that knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato in a fruit salad. We can call a tomato a fruit and a vegetable because both classifications are valuable, one to a botanist, the other to a cook. If you were to study Metroidvanias to try to see what makes them tick, Control might teach the wrong lessons. There are other works that more strongly exhibit the fundamentals of the genre. Games that are less linear and constrained, and empower the player instead of directing them. From a strictly mechanical point of view, Control is better understood as a linear action game whose levels fold in on and around each other. This is the botanist point of view, judging the subject by the nature of its creation rather than its use. But games are grouped into genres descriptively rather than prescriptively. We are, as people who play games, selfish. What we get out of a game is much more relevant to us than what was put into it. So while I've argued that Control departs from the structures and rules of other Metroidvania titles, I can't deny that it lights up the serotonin receptors in players' brains. And for most of us in our everyday lives, that's really all there is to it. It tastes like Metroid, so I'll pop it in when I want to play a Metroidvania. Is Control a Metroidvania? Well, no. But if you're asking that question, you're probably more interested in the relationship between the two than a flat yes or no answer. And this is really the secret of game genres. They're not as useful as labels as they are avenues of conversation. Control is not a Metroidvania. Arkham Asylum is not a Metroidvania. Dark Souls isn't a Metroidvania. And we could gatekeep those titles, throw them out of the discussion, and jump back into 26 years of worshipping Super Metroid. But another approach would be to explore the differences and similarities. Build our understanding of game design and genres by looking at the space between the two. Understand how they came close enough together to feel so similar. Control is not a Metroidvania, but by asking if it is, we can appreciate both the game and genre in a new light.
Hey, hope you enjoyed the video. Two things I want to let you know before you go. First, my voice does sound strangely deep in this video. I was crunched for time while making it, and I had to record the script while I was sick, so my vocal cords are a little stiff. It's not digitally manipulated. Second, my next video up is going to be on Persona 5, so if you're into that, please do subscribe. You can catch that when it drops. We'll be going deeper than we did here. We're going to talk about the story's themes, we're going to talk about the gameplay using those themes, and we're going to delete Goro Akechi from the game. It'll be great, trust me, you don't want to miss it. So until then, thanks for watching, and class dismissed.